During the production of my Frankfurt S-Bahn review, I remembered the older Schnellfahrstrecke Köln route and how it got a huge timetable update earlier in 2025. It's taken me a while to get around to revisiting this route, but I'm finally doing that today. Going into this, I was concerned that Dovetail would pull a New York to Trenton, in which case we would end up with another improperly tested and laggy pile of arse on Köln to Aachen. Fortunately, I was proven wrong this time. Schnellfahrstrecke Köln to Aachen was originally released in August 2020 as one of 3 core routes in the Train Sim World 2 package. These days, this route can be acquired as a standalone add-on for Train Sim World 6 at a full price of $43.59 NZD. Route coverage is not particularly long, only running for 70 kilometers, or 43 miles, from Köln Hauptbahnhof at the eastern end to Aachen Hauptbahnhof at the western end. As much as I don't like this route's linear nature, it does at least have one interesting aspect, in the form of the section between Düren and Köln-Ehrenfeld, where ice trains can get up to 250 km per hour. West of Düren, the route takes on a noticeably different character with only 2 tracks, no parallel tracks for the S-Bahn trains, and only freight, regional and intercity trains continuing past Düren. The base route only comes with 2 electric multiple units, namely the BR406 ICE 3M and the BR442 Talent 2. The ICE 3M was new to TSW at the time, but the same could not be said for the Talent 2, as we already had the 3-car BR1442-1 variant with the Rapid Transit route of December 2017. The unit included with Köln to Aachen is the 4-car BR442-2 variant painted in DB Regio colours. Thinking back to the ICE 3M, DTG's decision to cut the route coverage at Aachen Hauptbahnhof instead of continuing across the border into Belgium means that we can't make use of this unit's multi-voltage capabilities in the game. As for any post-release DLC for this route, the only one of which I am aware is the S-Bahn Köln BR423, which was just a lazy rehash of the BR423 that we already had with Hauptstrecke München to Augsburg, to the point where Dovetail didn't even bother changing the interior to make it accurate for the Köln units, but you at least got a new timetable for the Köln to Aachen route. The original timetable mode, without any layers active, was ridiculously Spartan and made the route feel like an absolute ghost town. The Talent 2's RE9 service only runs hourly, while the ICE 3M's Frankfurt am Main to Brussels service is only every 2 hours. It doesn't help that the ICE 3M runs non-stop between Köln and Aachen, so it only takes around 32 minutes to cover the full route in this train. Another thing relating to the ICE 3M that I want to mention is the cab camera position, which I don't like because it is set too high up, to the point where you can barely see any of the control desk when you're looking ahead at the track. It's a bit disappointing to see that TSW still doesn't have any kind of adjustable field of view, something that we do have in TS Classic. The most up-to-date version of the previous timetable, with the S-Bahn BR423 services active, only had around 552 playable services throughout the 24-hour period. The new timetable, released in June 2025, has 699 playable services, but a little over 4,000 services in total. I don't know how that's even possible. Despite the huge timetable update, The route itself has not been upgraded to the same standards as more modern TSW routes, with alterations like TOD4 lighting and volumetric fog, etc. The specific DLC packs required for the new layers are Bahnstrecke Bremen to Oldenburg, Nahverkehr Dresden, Kinzigtalbahn Frankfurt to Fulda, Hauptstrecke Hamburg to Lübeck, Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr, Link Rheinstrecke Mainz to Koblenz, LGV Mitte to Rheine, Maintalbahn, Main-Spessartbahn, DB BR363 Diesel Shunter, Bahnstrecke Salzburg to Rosenheim, Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel to Würzburg, Railpool BR193 Vectron, Flixtrain BR193 Vectron, Original DB BR101, not the expert version, DB BR218, S-Bahn Köln BR423, and Foslo G6. The total cost for all that lot, at least on Steam, is a horrific $721.52 NZD if you were to buy the TSW6 versions at full price. All the more reason to hold off and wait for a sale. Eilendorf Station is notable for finally getting trains calling here in timetable mode. For the longest time, you couldn't stop at this particular station as it is not part of either the Talent 2 or ICE3M schedules, and it's normally only the RB20 that stops here, as well as 2 RE1 services a day, one in each direction. The RB20 service is represented by the BR642 diesel multiple unit, which comes with the Maintalbahn route add-on. However, the BR642 in TSW only has suitable decals for the Maintalbahn, so she looks a little bit out of place on Schnellfahrstrecke Köln to Aachen. Regardless, this unit will also be seen on additional AI-only services in Düren, Horem, and Köln. And before I forget, is anyone else getting this weird bug with the overly bright headlights on the BR642? Actually, it's not just on the BR642, as I was also seeing it on the Flixtrain Vectron. Meanwhile, the BR425 electric multiple unit from Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr is A. now looking noticeably outdated compared to the updated version from Bremen to Oldenburg, and B. has 85 playable services in SKA's timetable, but they are only playable between Köln Hauptbahnhof and Köln Ehrenfeld. This is a very short section of the RB27 and RE8 services, which run off the map to either Koblenz Hauptbahnhof or Mönchengladbach Hauptbahnhof. However, DTG still hasn't bothered to update this unit to accommodate destination options for RB27 and RE8, thus leaving the destination displays completely blank, and I don't like that. Meanwhile, the BR425 can also be seen on AI-only RB33 services at Aachen Hauptbahnhof, but there's no destination problem this time, as RB33 was already in the destination options. This is due to the service being represented in the timetable on Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr, but due to the stupidly short route coverage, it's only playable between Duisburg Hauptbahnhof and Essen Hauptbahnhof. As an aside, I think Duisburg to Bochum might be one of the blandest route concepts in TSW history. To my surprise, the BR401 ICE-1 from Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel to Würzburg has 9 playable services on the Köln to Aachen route. 3 of them are short depot moves, while the remainder are passenger services between Köln and Aachen. Only one of those services runs in daylight, more specifically in the morning, without referencing the coral, while the other services are in the evening or late at night. The last of these layers on which I want to shine the spotlight is the Flixtrain BR193 Vectron, on which I just used the horn to try and recreate the bass line from Easy For You To Say by Tony Basil. This locomotive only has 10 playable services on SKA, and most of them are empty stock or run-round movements. In this timetable, there is only one Flixtrain service in each direction between Köln and Aachen. The westbound leaves Köln Hauptbahnhof at 13:49, while the return working leaves Aachen Hauptbahnhof at 15:26. Both services run non-stop over this section, and as an aside, I just realised that if Phil Swift was involved, this would be Flixtrain. Despite the heavy focus on passenger services, freight was not forgotten in the SKA timetable update. The freight services primarily use the rolling stock from Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel to Würzburg, so that means they're mostly hauled by the farcically overused BR185-2. Either that, or the slightly less boring BR185-5 if you've got Rhein-Ruhr-Osten. And while most of these services are basic A to B runs, you also have the opportunity to do some shunting in Stolberg or Köln with the BR363 or Vossloh G6. Thinking back to the horrible LGV Mediterranee add-on, the TGV Duplex, which is probably the only good aspect of that route, appears in the timetable on Schnellfahrstrecke Köln to Aachen to represent the Thalys trains. Proper Thalys DLC when? My first run in the new timetable was an S-Bahn S19 service with the BR423, going from Köln Hauptbahnhof to Düren. The performance in the Köln area was better than I was expecting, averaging around 40 frames per second, and it got up to an average of between 75 and 92 FPS once I got past Köln-Müngersdorf Technology Park. That's the third intermediate station after Köln Hauptbahnhof. However, there were still some occasional instances of stuttering, but that doesn't surprise me at this point. Something didn't seem right with the NPCs, although that's nothing unusual for TSW at this point. At the start of a return trip from Düren to Köln, the leading unit was completely empty, and only the last 3 coaches in the trailing unit actually had any passengers aboard. More of them walked along the platform, but didn't get on the train, and by the time I got to Buhr, the second station east of Düren, the train was completely empty. At the next station, Sindorf, I noticed that a few passengers were now scattered around in the leading unit, but both units were still far from full. Sometimes, the NPCs won't spawn on the platforms at all, thus making the environment feel unnaturally lifeless, in contrast to the busy rail scene. As for any other issues I noticed on SKA, these were some plant assets that have been placed too close to the track just east of Buhr, poor foliage details on the embankment at Köln-Müngersdorf Technology Park, this tree placed way too close to the track at Sindorf, and a strange light bleed issue on the Talent 2 that, for whatever reason, still hasn't been fixed. The issue was most noticeable in the shade, at night, or in poor weather. In closing, I'm happy with the new timetable on Schnellfahrstrecke Köln to Aachen, but it clashes with the lighting and scenery, which are now looking noticeably dated compared to newer routes. Let's not forget the fact that SKA is now a 5-year-old route, not to mention the sheer amount of money you'll need to spend on DLC for the timetable mode layers. It's a pity that this route wasn't given a full remaster on par with Cathcart Circle and the West Somerset Railway. As an aside, what's the bet that we'll get Grand Theft Auto 6 before the Great Western Express remaster, especially considering just how long we've been waiting for the blasted GWE remaster at this point. Anyway, as for where I would rate Schnellfahrstrecke Köln to Aachen in its current state, I think it deserves a 6.5 out of 10.